Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, and 105.3 FM from New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have been on our journey since the very beginning. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much. Also, tremendous gratitude for our sponsorship and the contribution of Justin Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snick, tongue-tied, the Sonic Surgeon, who's an award-winning composer of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, most which can be found on Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, you name it. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, who is the man behind our artwork. So thank you, thank you. Tonight, the Outer Realm welcomes back Scott McClelland of Diablo Manor, who will be picking up where he left off in the last segment and is going to be sharing some of his paranormal experiences with us. So another great segment to check out. And here is the man. Hello. How are you?
Good evening, Michelle. How are you?
I am well. So happy to have you back. I had so much fun the last time you were on and found you extremely intriguing. Everything you do to me is intriguing. And it was a treat to find out about your family history, which was like a wow factor because there was so much things that we all think we know so much about, especially as we're all, I would partake in many of midways, as they call them in our day, and so on, and not really getting a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, like some of the things that your family was responsible for and how far back it actually went and so on. So I would like to, if it's okay with you, since I'm sure there's a lot of people who were not able to tune in or who may have just found us. Shame on you if you just found us now. But anyway, let's maybe just catch them up and bring them up to speed. So I will let you take it away.
Well, thank you, my dear.
You're very welcome.
My family has been running large carnivals and freak shows for the past 104 years. This is what we do. My grandfather ran a large sideshow and freak show from 1920 through 1968, and he toured throughout the United States and Canada. Now, he also had a carnival where he invented most of the rides that were on it, and he was a rather interesting man. They called him the brain from the Ukraine because the fact that he was so brilliant at reinventing ideas that were once maybe fun, but now they were super awesome. And that's what grandfather did. Just for instance, he back in the day, Ferris wheels were created by the Ferris Company. And the Ferris Company was out of Germany, and they basically made their Ferris wheels upright and shipped them overseas. And then when you finally got them into the prairies and you were traveling them upright, sometimes the winds would hit them pretty hard, and they'd basically blow over and splinter into basically nothing. Wow. And my grandfather thought this was absurd, so he invented the very first collapsible Ferris wheel that could be moved on a trailer base, which was the advent of trailer-based rides. Now, he was an equestrian rider, and so when he was young, he was watching a merry-go-round, and the horses on the merry-go-round would just go in circles. And between each horse would be, of course, a love seat for the parents to sit on, etc. And he was looking at the horses, thinking to himself, if I was a child on one of these horses, I'd want to feel the horse beneath me, because he was a lover of riding. And so he invented the step mechanism that makes the horses go up and down on the merry-go-round, which was the advent of the bobbing horse merry-go-round.
All the little things that we know and love to this very day.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
you know,
Another one of his inventions is quite popular, mostly in the United States, because of the fact that it was, well, to simply put it, it's the teacup ride at Disneyland.
wow.
He invented
Yes.
the idea of the teacup ride first as a flying saucer ride, but the center wheel that you would turn in the teacup ride to make it go faster or slower while you were going in big circles was his idea. And
Wow.
so he created this because he wanted to make it a lot more fun than just going in a big circle in a teacup. You can now go in circles while you're going in circles, and why not
Oh,
make it as
God,
crazy
I
as
know.
possible? Because you can actually change the speed by just pushing the wheel. And
Right.
he was a thoughtful man. He actually drilled holes in the seat, and many people ask me why he would have drilled holes in the seat of these little the teacups, and it's because the children would sometimes puke, and there was no
Right.
real good way of
Exactly.
cleaning it except if you had holes in the seat, so you could take a bucket of water, slosh
And
it into the
just,
teacup, and boom, there you go, it's clean again.
I'm
All the
sure
puke would
some
be
loved
thrown
him.
out the little holes. Isn't that
It
nice?
was nice and thoughtful. I'm sure he was cursed along the way by the odd
Oh, I'm
parent
sure he
going.
was, but the kids loved it.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. It must have been so much fun. People dream of running away to the circus and living this
Yes.
extraordinary bohemian type of life. It must have been quite exciting for your family growing up in this environment.
It was a very bohemian lifestyle. They were on the road most of their life. My
Mhm,
grandfather uh, had 9 children. Now, here's the
mm,
thing. Back then, much like in certain circus families even today,
mm.
uh, parents would have kids to actually train and become a part of the act. And that's
Right.
exactly what grandfather did. He actually had 9 kids that he could train into singing and dancing and doing comedy and playing musical instruments. And now he didn't have to pay them, he just had to feed them and house them. And that was the old way of doing things.
It
Now, my
was.
mom was the youngest person in the family. And so
Mhm,
instead of being trained to be a performer in the show, my mom was, well, she worked the games and also was known to, well, train the monkeys, the tigers, and the bears, etc. And
very
so
nice.
ultimately, that was her vocation. But at a
Mhm,
very early age, before she actually got to work on Grandfather's Carnival, uh, she got to sit backstage while mom worked. And my grandfather performed what we call in the old industry Grand
mhm.
Guignol Theatre. Now, Grand Guignol Theatre is a Parisian type of theatre that is based on morality plays. And
Right,
ultimately, what takes place is there's a lot of bloodletting and
right,
gore on stage. It's kind of like a Toby Hooper film on stage way back
right.
in the day. And of course, all the blood is fake. But my mom would have to watch her mother die 3 times a
Mm,
day.
that'd be hard for a child.
And so for a 4 or 5 year old child, that is a bit hard, I must
Yeah,
admit. But
yeah.
in her mind, even as a child, she understood that what they were doing wasn't real because by supper time, mom was already cooking up pierogies and kubasov for everybody, and making
Right.
sure that everybody was well fed. So obviously, mom was okay, or a superwoman, or a zombie, one of the three.
One
So
of the 3,
you
yeah.
know.
Just coast along. And how about for young Scott?
Well, at the age of 11, I received a letter from my grandfather stating that whenever you come to our carnival, you always have a group of people around you because you're such a ham. Have
Right.
you ever thought of becoming a magician like me? Well, I was
Mm.
like, fuck yeah, I'm 11 years old. Who
Yeah,
wouldn't want to become a magician?
right.
But then I read further, and it stated that if I wanted to become a magician, I had to learn the oldest piece of magic known to mankind.
Right.
It was called the cups and balls. Now, this had been performed during the Ming Dynasty for the pharaohs in Egypt, even for the kings and queens of Europe.
Mm,
It's been all over the world, and it's been around for over 3,000 years.
mhm,
Now, he gave me 6 months to learn how to perform the cups and balls. And he
mhm.
said, if after that 6 months, when I performed it for him, I did not fool his eye, I would never work in the industry.
Hmm,
And so
wow.
I had basically 6 months to really put my nose to the grindstone and prove myself. The day came, we were in his kitchen, and he said, "Boy, perform for me." And I finally performed the Cups and Balls. And thank God I fooled his eye, because I became that year a professional magician. And by the time 1978 rolled around, I was already producing my own shows at the age of 12. And I was touring with the Calgary Stampede, Edmonton's Klondike Days, and Regina's Buffalo Days. And I had my own small TV special on CBC that same year. So these things all happened all at once, and my career just built from there.
That's quite exciting. That's quite exciting. So how did that affect school? I mean,
well,
at 12 years old, you're on the road.
Thank you for asking that. My teachers actually, they understood that I came from a circus family, a carnival family that performed. And they would allow me to actually go and do these shows if they were on contract, and I had to, of course, miss school. Of course, I'd have to make up for it. But my parents would sometimes put me on train cars and in buses with a note in my pocket, because I was only 11 or 12 years old. And it would say, "My name is Scott McClelland. Make sure I get to this place at this time, and that I'm on stage at this time." And so ultimately I'd be carrying my gear and my costume, and I'd just be sent on my way. And that's
that's just crazy. Different times, though. You could actually, it was a trusting thing. Like, I don't think you could get away with something like that now.
Well, exactly. But the thing is these contracts were big, and the people that I was going to were trusted. It was a rather exciting time period.
Oh, and, absolutely.
I was very lucky, and I know that I live a charmed life. I was very lucky to apprentice under my grandfather, because I spent my formative years apprenticing under him from the age of 11 through 17. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's like hands-on protege, basically, right?
Yes.
That's fantastic. So we fast forward into adulthood, and I do remember Carnival Diablo. I remember it quite well, actually. And I remember seeing the trailers, like, oh, there he is. So, and what I remember finding really interesting is I remember seeing it at a certain place in Toronto. We're going to start getting a little bit into spooky stuff now, because I was doing an article for Toronto Life magazine, and we were brought to this very interesting looking building. And I remember thinking, oh, this is really interesting if the trailer's outside. So anyway, didn't think about it much beyond that, but what an amazing place. And before we get to that, I just want to let everybody know, get ready for that, because you're going to want to hear all about that one. But being younger, having these big families, living all over the place, paranormal experiences. You had to have had paranormal experiences, traveling everywhere.
Strangely, my first paranormal experience had nothing to do with my grandfather's side of the family that ran a carnival. It was my other grandfather's side of the family.
Okay.
My grandfather McClelland, who was my dad's father, was a Queen's Bench judge. And when we had family gatherings at his place, there was a lot of people that would come to the house. Like, this is in the late 60s, early 70s. And because there was so many people coming to the house, there wasn't enough bedrooms for everybody. So some people stayed on couches. But because I was the oldest child in my family, I was allotted the basement on a cot.
Nice.
And
nice.
So well, it is what it is. And
it is.
I wasn't really scared of the dark or anything. I didn't have that kind of problem as a child.
Right.
So I slept in the basement. But what happened was, one night I was laying in bed. It must have been around 11:30 in the evening. I had probably been laying there since 9 o'clock in the evening, just kind of like enjoying the ambiance upstairs, because you could hear the parents tittering and laughing and enjoying their game of canasta or whatever the hell they were doing upstairs.
Every family had to do the canasta.
I was
no
different. Bridge or canasta. What the hell?
I know.
Understand it these days. Who plays that? But back then that was very popular. So I hear that, but there was a point at around 11 in the evening where I heard the voices still, and it was, it sounded like everybody was having a great time upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
What I discovered the next morning was my parents and everyone had gone to bed at 10. And so at 11 o'clock, when I was hearing these voices, these weren't my family. I was actually hearing other voices from beyond the realm. And I, without thinking, and because I wasn't scared, was okay with this. And it was very strange and very, very surreal, because once I made the realization, because I was a kid, I was only 9 when this took place. I was in the basement, and I was listening to laughter and voices from a completely different dimensional plane. And it wasn't my family. And it wasn't, I don't know if it was good or malevolent. I couldn't tell you. But that was my very, very first experience with paranormal activity.
Exactly? How old were you? How old were you?
I was 9.
9. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. They broke you in nice and early.
Yes. Well, finally, by the time I was 16, I should say, when I was 16, my friend Charles Porlier, who is known as a very famous makeup artist now and special effects artist in Hollywood. He was the makeup artist for Christopher Reeve, who was in Superman, for all the time that he was alive. And also did all the special effects and everything for 13 Ghosts and Ghost Ship and a few other great Hollywood.
Love that movie too.
Yes,
yeah, those are well done.
One of the best kill scenes ever. But that being said, Charles contacted me when I was 16. He was at the time 21. He was a few years older than me. He knew I loved horror, and he had contacted me and he said, "Scott, I'm making a haunted house, and I want you to be involved with me to help me build it." And so I apprenticed under Charles Porlier in learning how to make corpses and how to do the illusionary special effects that were needed to bring this place to life. And it was called the Cane Manor. Now, what it was a large, a manor of sorts, a mansion, where a butler would take you on a tour of the place, but the butler did not want you there because, you see, there was a for sale sign outside of the house. And the backstory was basically the house had gone up for sale because of the government, because the owners had passed on, and the butler was still living there. So he didn't want the house sold, and he decided to kill anybody that came in. So you were being taken through the house by a psychopath.
Nice.
And I played the butler.
I see.
Now, the thing is we had a makeup room. The kitchen had been turned completely into a large black maze. So we gutted the kitchen, and it became these little tiny hallways that, would make you completely disoriented. But our makeup room was in the floor. So there's, those old floor hinged doors that would take you to the basement. Yes. There was one of those in the floor. So I was probably a week into doing the Cane Manor at this point, and I opened up the door, and there was a light on downstairs. I could hear voices down there talking. I was pretty sure that other people were still getting their makeup on, which means I wasn't that late, because I was afraid I was late. And I got downstairs, and when I got to the bottom stair, I noted there was nobody in the basement, and all the sound stopped completely. Well, I turned on my heel and started running up the stairs. And as I started running up the stairs, right behind me was the sound of footsteps. And because I was running up into the maze, it was already pitch black. I had to run through the maze with these footsteps behind me. I couldn't see a thing. And it exited out into the living room, which was done up like a Victorian living room. Well, I come running out, and I'm in a panic. And Charles is sitting there, and he goes, "You're late." And I go, "I'm sorry, but I can't seem to get downstairs. There's something keeping me from actually getting my makeup on." And he laughed at that. And thought that I was just fucking around. Well, I wasn't. I finally had him come down with me, kind of holding my hand, as it were. And I put on the makeup and I went and did my job. There was one night, because we would work until 2 a.m, and then we would close and we'd do cleanup. There was one night we were there at 3 a.m. We had done our cleanup, and me and Charles were sitting in the living room talking, and there was an old clock on the mantle, and it was a beautiful old ornate clock, and it dinged 3 times. It was dong, 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 and I was like, "That's such a cool clock." And Charles went, "That isn't supposed to happen." I said, what are you talking about? It's just a beautiful old clock. He goes, "Pick it up for a second." I picked it up and I turned it around. It was an old clock that had been gutted. It was just there for looks. It was just a prop.
Right.
It had no interior. There was no clockwork inside of it, nor a bell to ding.
Right.
And it went off 3 times. So we were experiencing poltergeist activity, clairaudience. We were experiencing so many different things in that place. And here we are supposedly haunting it for fun for the public.
Right.
Little did they know,
the spirits are getting into it.
To a real haunted house.
Right. Right. And he had no idea when he chose this house that it
had no idea. It was a house that was up for demolition, so we actually got to tear out some walls and put in like moving bookcases and everything.
Right.
Like that. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But it's something I'll never forget. Right. And it was my second biggest thing that ever happened to me.
Right.
Until in
Toronto,
2000, I moved into a mansion in Toronto.
Okay. Oh, well, I know.
Yes.
It's a beautiful house, but looks are deceiving, right?
Yes. It was a large mansion on Lakeshore Boulevard. And it was in the area of Mimico in Toronto. And the first night I was there was not to live. It was actually to start fixing the house up and painting it and prepping it before I brought my furniture in. Okay. And I was painting until around 3 or 4 in the morning. And all I had was my bed spring, not the actual full bed. And it was just in the bedroom, but nothing else was there. And I was dead tired. It was around 4 in the morning by the time I had done. And I went to lay my head down on the pillow. And as I did, my pillow started whispering to me. I took my head away, and the whispering stopped immediately. And then I brought my head back down. I took my head away. I did this 3 times. And then I was like, I sat up straight and I said, okay, look, I'm moving in here. And if we're going to cohabitate here together, you're going to have to allow me to sleep and rest. Because you don't know my background. And if you piss me off, I'm going to smudge the hell out of you. Right. And you won't be a happy ghost.
Right.
And so when I basically had my little tete-a-tete with whatever was whispering through my pillow, it stopped for that.
But did you know that you were moving into a haunted place? Because most of these old places, everybody assumes are haunted, but not always necessarily the case.
The rental price was really low. I was renting the house. I of course, I'm an artist. I could not afford to buy a mansion.
Right.
So I was renting this house. And when I went for the first day, the very first day that I went, the realtor said, we have to knock on the door because the lady that lives here is still moving things out. And we knocked on the door. The lady was moving things out, but she was also being incarcerated at the same time because she had murdered her husband.
Oh.
Yes, she had stabbed him to death.
Oh, my. Okay.
And so,
that'll leave an imprint in time, won't it?
But what I learned was I was actually renting the house from the mafia.
Ah.
Yeah.
good quality house.
And I learned
Yeah.
about this because there is a book written about the house called Overshadows.
Okay.
And Overshadows is written by Richard Palmisano, a wonderful parapsychologist who studied the house for 9 years.
Mhm.
And the house was built in 1903 by the mafia. And it ultimately, they know that in the actual foundations of the house, there are 7 bodies
Mm.
in the cement foundation. So they can't tear down the house
No.
to get to these things without ruining the foundations of the house itself.
Right. Right.
But what I learned was there were tunnels under the mansion.
Mhm.
And these tunnels were created specifically to move booze during Prohibition.
Right.
And ultimately, when Prohibition was over, those tunnels became an illegal abortion clinic.
Wow.
And quite a few women lost their lives because of the fact that the people that were working in it were not really doctors. And
Right.
I don't think they really gave a rat's ass about human life.
What's
One of
happening?
them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
sad. That's
so
sad. So
Richard,
you're living with this melee of just tumultuous history.
horrifying history.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was told that there was in the master bedroom there was a bank of windows looking out onto the street, and in 1923, another mafia family came driving up with machine guns and blew out the front windows, trying to kill the family inside. But what they weren't planning on was the fact that this family inside the house just happened to be even more powerful than they were. And they came back at them with even more gunpowder and killed them all.
Right.
And so this all happened right in front of the house.
Right. Wow.
And this was the master bedroom to which I was in. Now, when I was cleaning the master bedroom, everything was hard teak wood. It was gorgeous, just beautiful inside, all hand-carved, ornate, filigree and everything. And I was cleaning the windowsills and all that, and I knew pretty well every inch of the place by the time I was done pledging it. And the next morning when I woke up, I was standing by the front window looking out, and I looked down, and I saw scratched into the wood at least a 1/4 inch deep, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. And this was like fresh. This had been done overnight because I had cleaned that area. And I know that there was no writing in wood on the sill at all. And my head was right next to it while I slept. So this is even weirder.
Oh, so you didn't even hear it either?
No, I didn't even hear it. So I contacted a psychic friend and I said, listen, I'm not going to tell you anything about the house right now, but I want you to try and walk through the house and tell me if you feel any hot spots, as it were. Well, he went into the place and immediately went into the master bedroom. Like he segued past the parlor, the library, and everything else, went straight for the bedroom. Walked up to the windowsill and he goes, is this it? And he points right at the alphabet. And I'm like, yeah. He said, this wasn't here before. And I said, no, it wasn't. He said, and he starts touching it. He puts his hand on it. He goes, this isn't bad. And I said, I don't understand. It's creepier than hell. He goes, no, this isn't bad. He says, I have a feeling this was done by a child, and the child is welcoming you here because it's lonely. So it was giving me the ability to see that it knew the alphabet.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
Well, the house itself is horribly haunted, one of the most haunted places in Canada. And when I say horribly haunted, I mean there was poltergeist activity, there was sprites, there was orbs, there was demonic activity, there was full-bodied apparitions, and there was a thing called a boca. Now, a boca is a North American Indian term for water demon. And the back of the house outside has a large Celtic cross and shrubbery and a maze. And beyond the maze is a big parking lot to an apartment building complex just beside the house on the other side, behind it. And I could see a guy walking to his car behind the house through the maze and everything.
Right.
And as he was walking, I could see a 9-foot tall black figure gliding, not walking like he was, gliding behind him. And when the guy finally got close to his car, this 9-foot tall thing went into itself. So its bottom and its top met in the center, and it completely disappeared.
Sounds a lot like a shadow being.
Well, the Boca is a water demon, and so it's like I had to do some research on that. And we discovered that because I was on Lake Ontario during the Second World War, at the beginning of the war, they were doing, for the Navy, water exercises with their big ships.
Yes.
And one of the ships actually sunk, killing around 250 18 to 20-year-old new Navy men. Oh. And what I've learned is we believe that the Boca is actually all of those angry souls balled together into one large entity that is now not haunting as much as wanting revenge on the end. And it stays where the house is because it's such a portal for bad energy. The house is just seething. Like it's a horrifying place to be. I was told before I moved in that you cannot have a relationship in the house because nobody has had a relationship that's lasted, and every relationship has ended in either violence or in a rather dramatic and horrifying way.
Wow, that's pretty dire. That's pretty dire. And nobody has tried to clear this place that you know of, I guess. Wow. Yeah, it's a tough one. That's a tough one. So yet you remained.
I'm sorry?
Yet you remained.
And yet I remained. Well, they did a Ghostly Encounters episode about what took place when I was there, because the episode was called Possession. And in my 7th year of living there, I had a relationship with a girl that had come from overseas, from Scotland. And while she was there, she became possessed. And now I've dealt with a lot of weird anomalies and activity in the past, but nothing like this. I woke up one night to the fact that my bed was shaking violently. I thought maybe it was the bed that was shaking, but then I noted when I turned over that it was actually her gyrating on the bed, not in a fun way. Ultimately, she was doing almost exactly what you saw Linda Blair doing in the movie The Exorcist. She started banging her back against the backboard and then bending over to her knees and then back again, and to her knees and back again. And then she finally just got up out of bed, walked to the center of the room and started to spin like a whirling dervish. And she went faster and I could not stop her. She was moving too fast and her arms were out and she was flailing while she was spinning. And you've seen my home. It's filled with precious antiques and relics. And so these started flying off the shelves, and because her hands were hitting them and everything. And eventually she stopped turning. Like she was moving really fast, and she stopped like on a dime. And she threw her head back and she started to scream, but it wasn't her screaming. It was like there were 7 demons, 7 men voices coming from her throat as she screamed upwards. And as she screamed upwards, her head started turning back behind her. And then the only way we can explain this was, it makes no sense. It's like her back broke, and if her legs are facing this way, her head went this way and then went down until her head was touching the back of her ankles. Then, while she was still screaming upwards, she started to walk with her head dragging on the ground behind her.
Oh my gosh.
It was impossible, physically impossible.
Yeah.
I was mortified. I didn't know what the hell to do with myself or her. It
Mhm.
was horrifying. And I didn't know what to do because at that time I was not as practiced as I am in witchcraft or in understanding how to cleanse a person of this kind of activity. And she eventually righted herself and ran into the bathroom, locked herself in,
Mhm.
and everything went silent. And
Mhm.
that's where I got scared. Now,
Mhm.
I thought to myself, okay, there's nothing in the bathroom that could be sharp, so we should be okay. But then I heard glass break. And I forgot that we had a coffee cup that the toothbrushes were in.
Mhm.
She had broken the coffee mug. And it took me Jesus, it must have been 2 or 3 hours before I could get the door open. And when I finally did, she was on the ground, leaning against the wall. Her arm had been cut open, and she'd written on the wall the word die.
Mhm.
This is not something that you can sit through personally and not be unscathed.
Yeah.
I have been since then suffering from PTSD
Oh
and
my gosh, yes.
not feeling uh, comfortable in many respects with people in
Mm.
general because of what took place. It was a horrifying experience. I sent
Mhm.
her back to Scotland immediately because I didn't want this thing to attach itself to her. And
Mhm.
I also didn't know what else to do. It had basically kiboshed anything else that we could have done happily together as a couple.
Oh, absolutely.
And
You don't really, it's not easy to survive something like that
no, and
emotionally.
and years later, when I finally did the Ghostly Encounters episode, uh, it it went on TV, and she saw it, and she said that she doesn't remember any of it, and she doesn't believe that it really happened.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was a huge surprise to me
Mhm.
because there was a lot of physical evidence, and
Mhm.
also we had talked before she left about what took place, and for her not to acknowledge it made me sad. And I'm hoping that there was nothing attached to her
At
when
that
she left.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, because I mean,
I have
her
never spoken
injuries,
to her since.
yeah. I mean, you would think that she would have looked at her injuries. She's not the type of person to harm herself. It would have been
No,
what caused me to harm myself, what caused this
no.
breakup to happen when everything was going so smoothly. But it's not unheard of. I've worked with many families who really, especially over time, it's like sometimes they'll not remember right away. Other times it fades away, and it especially dealing with children. I've seen children grow up into, young adults, and they're like, don't remember any of it. Well, okay. It's a good thing, I think, if, especially if it's such like a horrific thing like you just
Well,
described.
a defense mechanism of sorts for your mind, yes, but
Yeah.
I
Well, hypnosis would probably bring it back, but why would
well,
she want to?
I don't know if I'd want her to
Yeah,
relive it in her mind. I think
exactly.
ultimately that what she went through uh, was absolutely the worst thing anybody could go through, and so
Mm,
I asked her brother if she was prone to any kind of episodes, as it were, and
mhm,
he had said that she was very sensitive,
mm,
and that she did have some problems in that respect.
right.
So she was susceptible, and I didn't
Mhm,
know this when she came down, and sadly, uh,
mhm.
it was one of those things where I, in hindsight, I wish that we never would have gotten together because nobody should have gone through that.
No, no, it's pretty horrific, to say the least. And if she was very sensitive and was prone to certain types of incidents, that would make her an easy mark.
Yeah.
There's a belief that these things go after what's called the weakest link. They find the flaw, and that's what they prey on because it's easy,
Well,
you know?
she wasn't a emotionally strong person. That's the one thing I knew from
Exactly.
knowing her. Was
Right.
she wasn't an emotionally strong person.
Right.
Um,
And
and she did struggle with her own personal demons. Um,
right.
she had seen a lot in her past that I guess was pretty ugly. Um,
Do you think something could have followed her back from Scotland and just mixed in with everything in this house?
that's something I've never actually been asked about before. I've never even contemplated that. I thought it was
Yeah.
the house because the house had such a nefarious history, but
Hmm. Hmm.
that is a possibility.
Well, you never had anything like that happen to you before. And how long was she in the house before this event actually occurred?
Well, we lived together for around 6 months.
Okay.
And that didn't occur until the very last month she was there. So for 5 months, you know, things were fine.
Right. Right. Yeah, I just had to wonder if there was something in the house that sort of even would give little hints of behavior towards her.
Well, I was told that the groundskeeper of the house, when the house was, being run by the mafia back in the
Mhm.
20s, he was a very angry and he was very, what's the word, misogynic.
Right.
Uh, he was a very he hated women. Let's
Oh, got it.
plainly, he
Okay.
hated
Yeah.
women, and
Right.
so he treated the maids and the and the female cooks and all that very poorly. And he was
Mhm.
the groundskeeper, so he felt like he was the person in charge when nobody else was around, and
Right.
he would make their lives miserable. And
Right.
uh, it is said that some people that knew him while he was alive, he died in the 40s, but I
Mhm.
mean, that knew him, it said that he thought that he really owned that house. It was his
Mm.
because he had put all of his time in that place. So
Right.
it's believed that maybe it's him that stayed and he doesn't want relationships to work. So he frigs with people in such a
Mm.
way that they are basically never happy because
Hmm.
nobody has lived in that place and gotten out with a happy relationship. Nobody. And when I left the original Diablo Manor, because that's what I called it back then, even
Right.
the mansion, uh, when I left for 4 years, nobody moved into it.
Hmm.
Not one person. And after the fourth year, they turned it into office rooms instead of an actual livable space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Hmm. I knew people who had, as I guess there is a hospital nearby, I guess,
Yes,
or
there is. Yeah.
okay, who had been in that hospital, and they would basically comment on the fact that it I'm just wondering if the tunnels reach out that far, because they would comment on just how uncomfortable they felt, and it was females. It
Yes.
was always women
Only
who
female.
reported about that. Because through the years, everybody, people message me all the time, "Oh, I have a story to tell," and, I would say, "Oh, okay," and it was always women whenever in this hospital that they would feel like they were constantly being watched, very uneasy, they couldn't sleep, totally on edge, and it's like, wow. So I'm wondering if it was all one property at the time, or if the tunnels come close, or simply if it's within a bird's eye view, sometimes is all it needs, right? Spirits are not bound by time or space, for
Mhm.
sure. But going back to what you had said about the groundskeeper, I think it would take a tremendous amount of energy to do something like that to a person. Do you think that a human spirit could muster up that much energy as opposed to, let's say, more of a dimensional spirit
Well,
or
here's the thing.
or
I don't
entity?
believe in ghosts. And
Okay,
so like Michelle, I'll say that right off the top. I'm actually a believer in quantum theory.
I'm saying I'm a
And
big
and
believer in that.
so Einstein stated energy cannot be created nor can it be destroyed. And so
Right.
ultimately, because we live on the third dimension, it states in quantum theory that there are many others, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth. So
That's
as I'm
right.
sitting here right now, a freight train could be going right through me and I wouldn't even know it if I'm not
Mhm,
existing on that dimension at that moment. Now,
mhm,
what I feel is what we're experiencing when we have a ghostly encounter, because that's what we're using as humans to kind of like explain away what we're experiencing,
mhm.
is actually an energy form
Mm-hmm.
from a completely different dimensional plane that is playing with us because it's sentient enough and maybe a lot more smart and powerful than we are as humans, and is cloaking itself in something that we see as normal, such as this Victorian clad, kind of like Victorian spirit, etc., that you see in haunted houses. It's, you really have to think about this. What the hell? No organic clothing is going to be suddenly appearing on a real ghost. It makes no sense.
That's the big one.
A dimensional character could create, like I said, this false facade so that it appears to us as something it's not, because it's so overwhelmingly strange what it is that our minds couldn't process the reality of it.
Unless it's a dimensional bleed through. Because unless it's a dimensional bleed through, realistically speaking, there's also that theory, same idea, but that there are different versions of ourselves living simultaneously through all these different dimensions, right? Yeah. Doppelgangers, that's an example. They just sort of cross over. You've got time travelers, you've got time slips, there's all kinds of that. Because I agree. I do also have a problem with, for example, you see a child spirit with a bicycle or tricycle, and you're kind of like, how'd you get the bike here? Yeah. But could it also be that the energy of the being is projecting out what they want people to see? It's not actually what we're seeing. It's that they're projecting out what they want us to see.
Yeah. Again,
I love the theories. I love bouncing them around.
We have so little understanding of what's going on our own planet.
Yeah,
we think because we can feel things and see things that's what it's really all about. But our eyes are these little jello things inside of our head. Let's really talk about that for a second. We are just these organic jello molds with hard bones inside of it that make no sense, really. Right. And we are allowing ourselves to think, because we're sentient, that our eyes are perfect. Our eyes aren't perfect. We aren't seeing full color spectrum. We aren't understanding exactly what we are seeing around us, or are wise or otherwise, because we can't see them half the time. So why wouldn't it be possible that there are energy beings or other things living on our dimensional plane that we just can't experience because we're just not there yet?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am a firm believer in a lot of that, because I love bouncing ideas around, especially with people I haven't bounced them around with before. So it's quite interesting to me. There's also, I guess it depends on your faith, your belief system, right? Because I always say, to those people of faith, everything is a demon, or things are ghosts. And, to ufologists, they're extraterrestrials, just different species or races, and then you get into the scientific mind of everything, and it's quantum stuff and things of that nature. But what is it really?
Yeah, and this is the thing. It's like, I'm not religious at all. Because you see, to believe in the devil, you have to be a Christian. You have to believe in God. Because if there's a God, there's a devil in the Bible. But you see, I don't have a belief system in the Bible, nor do I believe that there's a God or gods. And I don't believe that there's a devil, because it's a Christian construct.
So you're full on science.
Our lovely little friend Baphomet here and all that is a lovely idol. A false one, but an idol all the same that can be adored, or not.
Be a pagan god.
It's a pagan thing, but I'm not a pagan. I'm just a practicing witch, but I deal in energy. That's it. I don't pray to a certain entity or a certain goddess or god. Instead, I'm dealing only in energies. I believe in the rule of 3. And that is that whatever you put out comes back to you 3 times. So you would never curse anyone, because the universe only hears the curse, not the person's name, and sends you back that energy 3-fold. Who wants that? And ultimately, when it comes to anything else in life, if you're hating on somebody, instead of really hating on them, what you should be doing is, and this is how I work, is you're wishing that they can maybe find a way to see their life in a better light as
Right.
they move forward in time.
Right.
Because obviously what they're doing is they're projecting, and
Mm.
their anger is more of their anger at themselves and their situation, whatever it may be. And so
Right.
why be angry at them for that? Because it's really not you. They're just projecting onto you. And so
Could it be ancestral trauma?
yes, it can be. And I
Yeah.
believe that, we can carry ancestral trauma, but we can also carry ancestral greatness.
Yes.
And I don't mean
Yes.
in an elite way, but I'm sure that this is where I get my grandfather's
Yeah.
abilities from, because
Right.
I am the only grandchild out of 50 grandchildren that really has this unusual amount of strength and ability in the world of production and creating shows and sculpting and painting, and
Mm-hmm.
it goes infinitum, like my grandfather.
Right.
And it's like my grandfather. So where does it come from? It has to be coming from him, because it certainly isn't just a natural thing. I'm not doing this just innately. This is coming from something.
Right. Yeah. Like DNA imprinting,
Yes.
like we are really truly are our ancestors, but in more ways than just that.
Get, more or less from their ancestors. So, you can have, like, your grandfather could be Hitler. That doesn't mean that you're going to be Hitler.
No.
That doesn't, but your grandfather could be Disney.
Right.
And you could still be a Hitler when you grow up.
It's true. I agree. I agree. I think we do have choices as to what we bring forward with us. But to not believe, to be totally scientific, because even science is now saying, we don't think that there is really death. We think essence goes on. What is your take when Scott is no longer here? Where does Scott think he's going?
Another good question. Here's what I think. First off, this is just me talking. I'm not trying to project
this is just us
to anybody. I'm not trying to preach here.
Yeah.
It's just where you're asking me a personal question. I'm going to give you a personal answer.
Exactly.
I believe that I'm two things.
Okay.
I am an organic life form.
Right.
And I am being embodied by a secondary life form that is an energy life form.
Right.
So without this energy life form, this organic life form cannot work.
Correct.
And so we're working symbiotically together. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, the organic life form has a shelf life.
That's right.
Of 70 to 90 years.
Right.
The energy life form is infinite.
Right.
And so it can go into other organic life forms and have more adventures or mishaps, whatever it might be, over time. And so that's where they get the idea of the old soul.
Right. Reincarnation, essentially.
I don't believe in souls. So this whole generational, life form of energy,
right,
moving forward and forward and forward through these organic, weird life forms. Because really, think about it. Science has proven that when we die, our body weight changes as our energy leaves our body.
Isn't that crazy?
It's not a huge amount, but it's enough that it can actually be weighed upon.
I know. It's pretty cool when you think about it.
Yes. And so I believe that we are infinite. It's just that this corporeal, thing that we live in has to go because it has a warranty. And the warranty only lasts a certain amount of time, and then it's done.
Exactly.
And so use this wonderful meat puppet as well as you can.
Right. Take care of it.
The time that you haven't taken care of it, because you only get to embody this meat puppet once.
That's true.
And so, you might get another meat puppet, but God only knows what it might be. You could be a flea. You could be a meat puppet inside of a squirrel by a cougar. You just don't know. And, you're still an energy life form. You're just different, So it's like we got lucky when we got into these human style forms.
Well, some might say, lucky. Some people
choose where the energy goes to. I don't think it has to be human. I think it can actually go into other animals, jellyfish, whatever the hell it might be. Who knows?
Right.
It's all hypothesis. And it's also just, it's not really science. It's just we don't understand death. Mm-hmm. We've been on the planet for, over 3 million years, and we still don't understand what happens when we die.
No.
And we've been struggling with it since we wrote on caves about,
Mm-hmm.
things that,
Right.
were in the darkness beyond
Right.
our little fire
Well,
pit.
I always say that we're probably the third or fourth kick at the can on this planet with respects to civilization, and most certainly I truly believe that there were advanced civilizations here before, if you factor in ancient Lemuria and Atlantis or things like that, extraterrestrial beings, perhaps. This planet's been around long before us to fathom that nobody or nothing else would inhabit it in all of these millions of years until we arrived, to me is a little bit unfathomable, but I would think that there were much more advanced, just in some of the stuff they're finding,
Oh, absolutely.
that they're definitely far more advanced than what we are. But for our civilization, no, I think you're bang on with that. I just don't think we get it at all.
No.
Though, or they do, if they do, you have a certain group of people who may, and we're not made privy to it. Us lowly folks.
Which is fine. The thing is, it's like, I just don't,
You know.
I don't believe for a minute that we really have an angle as
No.
to what's really going on out there. Even
Right.
while we live on the planet,
Right.
we just don't understand our real reality. Because here's the thing.
Correct.
Each one of us can go to Disneyland, but each one of us is going to walk away with a different memory
Yes.
because we live in our heads.
Hmm.
So what I've experienced is not what you're going to experience there. So as much as we go through the Haunted Mansion or the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, you're going to see things differently than I. You're going to feel things differently than I, and you're going to want to experience it for different reasons than I do. Because when I go through the Haunted Mansion or the Pirates of the Caribbean, I, even at the age of 11, was thinking as a producer, I was going, well, how did they make the animatronics work so we didn't hear them? How did they make this music sound so good no matter where we were in the ride? How did they do this? How did they do this? Whereas other people are going, wow, this is really cool. Those pirates look really real, instead of with the way I think. So everybody's got their own way of thinking.
Exactly.
And that means our realities are completely different. You go out with a person for 10 years, they're going to have a completely different idea of what the relationship was about than you will.
Absolutely.
Because they aren't in your head.
That's right.
No?
That's right. So you believe that we can manifest our own realities then?
Absolutely.
You're
and that's the best
control.
Thing about what we're doing right now on this planet is we are capable of manifesting our own realities. And so if more people came together and actually started talking about positive ways of influencing the planet, not through cults or anything like that, but just collectively trying to fix the problems that we've created as this creature we call human, we might be able to clean the planet up a bit, because we are getting close to a devastating event otherwise. And I think it takes a bit more sentience before we can get there. And then when we can actually sit down with each other and go, we're all experiencing this problem that's external, but we're making it happen. So we've got to get our shit together and talk to each other. Instead of you going, well, I can fix it over here, but Joe over here is going to be doing this terrible thing with his large diesel engines, and Larry over there is going to be doing this thing with his big oil monster.
There's got to be unison, in other words.
So it's like nobody's talking to each other.
Right.
And the big oil companies are saying, we want you to use oil only because otherwise we don't make money.
Right.
We don't care about the environment. We don't care what's going to happen to this planet. We just want your money. And so there has been electric cars since 1903.
Oh, I read an article, 1800s, with alternative, steam engines, all kinds of things.
And yet,
here
we are, still using oil and gas. It's frightening what money does to people.
It's primitive. I think I definitely agree with you. There needs to be, I think we all need to become aware. We need to keep evolving. And along with that evolution of awareness, we need to start accepting change. Because I think people fear change. People fear change.
Everybody wants to be complacent and just sit in their little happy.
Hey, change can be scary for some folks, right?
Well, change is scary to most folks.
Yeah.
Let's face it. But
Yeah.
it is a much needed process to grow.
100%. 100%.
And to become better.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you stagnate. And stagnation leads to cancerous death
Mm-hmm.
of society.
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh no, what happened there? I won't move. The
There we
screen
are.
started doing something wonky. No, I do agree. I do agree. And we live in, as scary of a time as many people think, it's also a time of wonderment because I'm a big believer in magic in many ways. I really am. I believe that somewhere along the lines, we forgot to embrace that child and to open ourselves up to all these amazing things that are hidden in plain sight.
But that's a choice.
Mm.
And so if more people could just understand that they can choose to think like a child without being stupid,
Right.
just think like a child, they
Right.
could enjoy life again.
Right.
I choose to think like a child.
Yes.
I always see the wonder in everything. I wake up in the morning and I try and see something new in a room that I've already been in because I
Right.
want to see it with new eyes.
Right. That's a very good perspective. It is to do that because so many people have the same, I live in a wonderful place.
You do.
It's amazing. There's always something different to look at because I love history. So I always tend to have my eyes drawn to architecture and I go,
Right.
gosh, I like to touch it and just, I wonder what this person, try to pick up on the energy, the person who built, let's say, the specific column or the piece of furniture that was all hand carved. You could just imagine the person who took the time to carve it and put their energy and their love and their pride into it. Those are things that I look for, So I don't know, but I think there are things, getting back to the paranormal a little bit, there are people who they find that wonderment in something like the paranormal. It's like they're looking for that unexplained thing to happen to them, to just show them that there are things that we can't see. I guess in a way it is embracing it a little bit like a child, looking for that wonderment. And I find, because being in the field for a couple of decades and doing many tours and visiting many places throughout the world, it's something that seems to bring people together. It was always interesting to me to see all people from all walks of life coming out on tours. I'm sure you go through the same thing with your establishment, and just seeing them anticipating what's going to happen. Will anything happen? They want to hear that scary story. In a way, it's interesting that they want to be scared, but they don't. You know what I mean? It's like,
Well, this is the thing. We originally were an animal that was created into small tribes. And these tribes would gather because there was safety in numbers.
yes.
These safety in numbers created a camaraderie. And so at the end of a hunting day, hundreds of thousands of years ago, these primitives, as it were, would tell stories of their hunt, and they would tell stories of the day. And this carried on through the Middle Ages and everything, where there was grand stories being told, and some became very whimsical and mythological with sea serpents and monsters, yada, yada. And so ultimately, here we are in the 21st century, and what are people doing?
Oh, yes.
They have forgotten how to tell a story.
Yes.
And so they are now tied into a piece of plastic and metal that has nothing to do with any reality, except for the fact that it's got algorithms that are basically feeding an addiction. So we are losing the ability to tell story. So I created the Diablo Manor as an attraction where it's fully immersive. And over the period of 2.5 hours, you enter and it begins with a story of many of the grand artifacts inside of the manor. And then it goes on to a sumptuous meal. And from the meal, you go into the parlor and you experience a magic show as an MIGICK, which ends with a seance. And so you end up dealing in mysticism and things that you never thought about as a 21st century person. And you leave suddenly wanting to tell the story of what took place to you, your friends. Now, story is being propagated again. And so this is my only real way of leaving a small dent in the world before I pass. And that is to help bring back the story. For I am the shaman and you are my tribe.
Right. I love it. I love it. And it's, not all that long ago, because 100 years really on a grand scheme of things really isn't that long ago, considering, the history of our civilization. But the Victorians loved storytelling, picnic in the cemetery, sending out macabre
Waxing
cards.
poetic, exactly, about death and what was out there. And they were very whimsical because they believed the mediums of the time period. They wanted to go to seances. They wanted to experience the unknown. And Mary Shelley, at the tender age of 17, was taking mushrooms to write a story with, all of her friends on a summer, evening to basically titillate and delight each other. And it ends up becoming this phantasmorical story that's lasted for ages. And this is the beautiful thing about the Victorian time period, which I emulate. You can tell because I actually dress like this more times than not. And my lifestyle, my home and everything is that. So I don't have to go out into the real world because, well, the real world kind of sucks. And so it's better to just kind of create your own world and deal with the real stuff only when you have to.
Right. I know.
Go to McDonald's if you need to. Go and get some groceries. Get home as quick as you can and immerse yourself back in your own reality, whatever that might be. And if it means knitting kittens, on sweaters, let that be that. If it means painting flowers, let it be that. If it means sculpting or painting horrible demons and monsters, let it be that. So it's like ultimately you create your own world.
Right. No, I think it's wonderful because I am one of those old souls. I still love to picnic in cemeteries. I still love, with like seances, and I still like everything it embodies, because I just find that it was a time where it was a simpler time. It was a harder time. Also,
it was a harder time. We can't get past that.
No, for sure.
Victorian England stunk. There was no proper plumbing, so there was shit in the streets. The smell of piss everywhere. We think of it without thinking of the smells. It must have stunk back then.
Sure.
And they would layer perfume on top of perfume to kind of get rid of the stink. And they would wear talcum powder on their face over their dirt and everything to kind of like get rid of it, because it wasn't about washing, it was about covering it up.
I know. Different times for sure. But I love how, you mentioned basically in London, I love the eras and looking at how the different countries, how different they all were during this time period. And the one thing that just stays the same, of course, was again the interest. It's funny how you have some people who just will not even embrace, that there is more out there. And I'm speaking from a paranormal standpoint, but also ufology. I guess everything that is deemed supernatural. How some people just will not put their heads there. My father, for the longest time, would just say, no. But in his later years, I found out not only did he have many experiences, he was also very gifted. He just refused to address it. Whereas on my mother's side, they were, everybody saw dead people. Everybody talked to them. Everybody was open about it.
Sure thing.
And my father was like, no, the house is settling. It's nothing more than that. I'm like, what? You know, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure something just came out of that wall. No. All right. So, you know, I think it's, again, it just comes back to having an open mind and
Agreed.
working around certain belief systems. So what would you say to somebody who comes in as, you know, being, skeptical? You always have, that one woman who's dragging her boyfriend over, or vice versa. We're going to do something really spectacular tonight. We're going to Diablo Manor.
Well, I'll
What do
tell
you
you
say to
something.
people who are like, no?
30% of the people that come to the Diablo Manor come not only as skeptics, but
Oh,
come completely like unaware of what they're walking into. So they don't have the right expectation of,
right,
the Gothic people and the people that are into Victoriana.
right,
They instead have no expectation. It's like, we're going to McDonald's, but there's going to be this guy going to tell you a story. That's what they're thinking. It's like,
right,
how stupid is this going to be?
right,
Instead, it's like when they walk in, it becomes immersive when you enter the front door,
right.
because there's a waiting room. And the evening does not start until 7 p.m. on the nose. And I am watching the clock. So if you
Right.
get there at 15 to 7 and start knocking on my inner door, nobody is going to answer. And so you start to sit with yourself in the waiting room. And the more you sit, the more you start to think. And the more you start to worry. And the more you start to think that maybe this wasn't the night that you had booked. And then it's like when the door finally does open and the person that welcomes you to the Diablo Manor, which is me, is otherworldly,
Right.
then
Right.
everything falls apart in their head. And I have them in the first 10 minutes. It doesn't matter who they are. They can
Right.
be, 3 nights ago, we had a 6'7" tall policeman come with his wife.
Oh,
This guy was a monster. He was huge. And I had him eating out of my hand by the 15-minute mark.
oh,
And
okay.
yeah.
Was
And
he receptive, or was he sort of
no, well, of course not.
skeptical? No, right.
He had that.
Logical.
He had the police stare and frown.
Oh, that's fun.
No, because he was trying to intimidate the host.
Right.
Because I'm very intimidating as this Victorian man.
Right.
And the thing is I don't intimidate.
Right.
It's impossible, because my character, I am Nikolai Diablo when you come in. And Nikolai Diablo is the devil. Who the hell historically is going to believe that the devil would be scared of anybody?
Right.
And so it's like, I'm thinking that way while I'm playing with these people.
Right.
But the thing is what you experience when I bring you in is so powerful. And I come across as such an entity of strength and power. You lose sight of all the intimidation things that you're thinking of doing to me.
Right.
And you completely fall into a complacent mode.
Right.
And after 15 minutes, this guy was giggling and chortling and actually acting like a 15-year-old kid.
Right.
Because he couldn't help himself.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
And then for the rest of the evening, I had him. He was like totally on my side. He actually wanted to, be a part of whatever I was doing. And by the end of the evening, we were actually waxing poetic about life and everything, as like we were buddies for 10 years.
I love it.
And that is really what it's all about. For me, it's creating a camaraderie with everybody that enters, so that they do not feel that they have to put on any airs, because I've got enough airs for everyone. And ultimately my airs are actually quite fun, because I'm not trying to be standoffish. I'm not trying to make them feel that, they can't get to know me. They'll never get to know Scott McClelland, but they will get to know this fascinating and fun character that is the showman that comes from this family of showmen, because that's a reality. My grandfather was a showman when he was around people. When he was around me, he was my grandfather.
Right.
Again,
Of course.
it's perception.
Right. Of course.
He said to me at a very early age, before I even became a producer and entertainer, back when I was 11, this is like when in 77, he said to me, 75 was when I was 11 years old, by the way. He said to me in 1975, he said, Scott, you have to dress like a showman. You must dress up, because then when people see you, they will visually understand that you are not them. You are
Right.
not a conformist. You are a showman. And so as they learn that you are a producer of entertainments, they
Mm-hmm.
will see you as something special, which you
Mm-hmm.
need to use as your hook to get more work. If you
Right.
do not come across as having a special trait, they won't be
Right.
interested in you. And I never forgot that. And so,
Right.
yes, I'm afraid it's true
Mm-hmm.
that, first impressions are important.
Oh, I agree. I agree. You have to, I guess, live your persona. You can't just
You cannot just take it
flip the
off,
switch. No,
no.
no. Now, when you created your character and you created the whole theme, like the whole interior of what is Diablo Manor, I know when I decorate, I took parts of the world that I had visited that stuck out with me, or I always say I leave a piece of myself and bring something back. How is it for you when you were planning all this and putting this decor together, and this is who I'm going to be and represent? And
Well, as people will see when they come to the Diablo Manor, it is a reflection of my family's career. So there is a
right,
lot of freak show paraphernalia from my grandfather's estate. There
nice.
are large circus sideshow banners in the house,
Hmm.
ornate Victoriana that depicting things like Baphomet, and
Hmm.
the kitsch of the Victorian time period, and the love for the occult that the Victorians had. Because
Right.
as much as I am an occultist, I'm not a person that, again, believes
Hmm.
in a god or a devil. And
Right.
so my ideas of magic, because I do believe in magic and I do use
Yes.
magic, my
Yes.
beliefs in magic are all based on energy transference.
Okay.
And ritual becomes a way of doing energy transference and making it even more important by making the ritual the
Hmm.
thing that puts the energy in its place.
Right.
And so I don't see a ritual as having to be performed with a black candle or a white candle. I
Hmm.
see the fact that you're lighting the candle as being the ritual. The
Right.
intent going into the lighting of that candle is the importance of it. The
Right.
writing of the note before it's burnt in the candle is the important thing, not the fact that you're, using a certain type of frankincense and that you
Hmm.
have, created some kind of weird spell on paper. None of these things really matter. It's the intent of whatever you're doing, and it can be simple.
Hmm.
And so my moon rituals and everything that I do
Hmm.
are very personal,
Hmm.
and I make moon water, and I do, all of the things that certain. I'm a kitchen witch. I really do enjoy
I love it.
creating spells and everything
Yeah.
with herbs
Yeah.
and spices and everything
Hmm.
nices, as it were. Because
Yeah.
as they say, are you a good witch or a bad witch? Well, I'm a
Mm.
good witch, and
Right.
I'm very proud of the
Right.
fact. Even though I come across as a very dark man, I
Hmm.
um, I only play the devil. I'm not the devil. So.
Right. Right. I think that's really big. A lot of people um, have those perceptions. I mean, I for years people have nicknamed me the Queen of the Dark Realm, and I laugh because I work with dark energies. To
Right.
usually to remove them and to assist people, but I'm really more of a light worker. So so it's just kind of like, well, thank you for the title, but I don't think it
Yeah.
really applies. But it's just what people see, and that's what they perceive.
Well,
So
the lay public, the muggles, will have words for
the
us,
muggles, I love it. Yeah.
but I have no problem with that because they've
Mm,
never lived the lives that we live. And so
right.
ultimately, let them think the way they want to think because that's creating a
Yeah.
reality that even makes it more fascinating in the long run.
Oh, it is. They do it
I'm
with
not
love.
going to
I
tell
love them
people
back.
to stop talking.
Right.
Do your thing. If you're a
Yes.
Christian and you think that you got to cross yourself before you walk past
Mhm.
my home, do your thing.
Right.
It helps me out in the long run because that's a fable. That's
Right.
not my reality. But
Right.
I like a good story. So thank you for
Absolutely.
it.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you also on the intention of everything, because I try to do this even when people ask me, how do I clear my home? Even if it's just to, everyday baggage. If you don't cleanse your space, that it gets heavy and it stays. We all have bad days, and those bad days, sometimes that energy just remains. And I always say it's not about the act, just the act of the cleansing and whatever method you choose to use. It's about the intention of the cleansing itself. And it is the power behind the words that you use in order to achieve what it is you want to achieve. Everything else is but emotion.
That's it.
Right. So.
And the nice thing about witchcraft is it's not a religion. No. It's personal. And so you can create your own rituals. You don't have to buy a book on witchcraft and read it to get the ideas. You can say to yourself, if you've never picked up a book on Wicca or on paganism or witchcraft, you can say to yourself, I'm going to do a ritual. And you make up your own ritual. And guess what? It works. Why? Because it's intention. And that's all that a spell is about, is intent.
Right. Right. I am going to have to do a very quick station and sponsor ID. You guys are listening to the Outer Realm Radio here on United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, and 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. Our guest tonight is Mr. Scott McClelland of Diablo Manor, who has just been so gracious with his time and telling us about his paranormal experiences and his life. And Diablo Manor, which, okay, people, it is open. It's spooky month, and he's going to get into all of that next. So thank you. Want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Folgers Coffee, again, who have been with us forever and ever. So thank you, Folgers. We love and appreciate you. And Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, Johnston Snicker, who is I guess he's responsible for our intro and our outro, and he is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, dark wave, electronic music. You can find it anywhere. He's got a lot of new music coming out just this month, so please go and check him out. You guys are going to love it. And I don't want to be a harpy, but everybody, get me in my Folgers commercials. We play them. We really do. We play them. Good way to advertise yourselves, and it's a great way to stay with millions of people listening. Never goes away, always in the archives. So think about that. So we are back with Scott McClelland. So Diablo Manor, how is this like a year-long thing? Is this open year-long? Is it just for spooky month, October?
No, it's actually it is an attraction that's open all year round. So as I call it, Hello Month.
Nice.
Halloween is a time period where people start getting into spooky mode. They like to do the Halloween thing because it's their way, because they are muggles, to actually get to dress up and put on makeup and be something that they are not. Right. Now, for me, every day is Halloween. And so ultimately, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, we are open. And we are open every Friday and Saturday night at 7 p.m. You have to book online. You cannot just come here. Right. And the evening is a fully immersive evening. You don't come for 10 or 15 minutes and leave. Right. You're here for around 2.5 hours, and it comes with a meal. Right. And so it is really special because, again, I'm taking all of my knowledge of 44 years as a producer of horror and stage production and putting it into an evening that is rather whimsical, rather Wonderland-like, and rather sinister, as it were. And so there is a lovely feeling and ambiance that permeates this lovely place called the Diablo Manor when you enter it. And you forget you are in Canada. You feel like you're in Europe when it starts. It's that powerful. Yes. Okay, excellent. And you also have a new, is it a toy line, a gift shop? Why don't you tell us about that? Oh my. Yes. It's called the Devil's Toy Shop. Now, as a sculptor and a painter and a creator of art, I have started my own toy line. And it's based on Alice in Wonderland and my love of horror. So I've amalgamated the two. And now you can buy things like my my mutant Cheshire cat, my
Okay.
Dumpty, which is my demonic Humpty Dumpty. I've got lovely portraits and everything of the Mad Hatter and the Queen of Hearts, all for the head, and things
Yeah,
like
I
that
love
you
it.
can purchase. And then I have another love, which is a little more kitschy, of the retro Halloween time period of the 60s. And so I've created Halloween masks, handmade,
Ooh.
of famous monsters such as Frankenstein and things like that.
Ooh.
And
And they're hand painted.
they're hand painted, but
Oh.
they're vacuum formed plastic over molds that I've created myself. And so
Mhm.
they are made by me, and they're cut out by me. Like the whole process is all hand done,
Wow.
except for the vacuum formed plastic, which is still an old fashioned process compared to what they do in big manufacturing companies these
Oh,
days.
it is. It
And
is.
so if you go to devilstoyshop.com, you
Mhm.
can actually take a look at what I have to sell you. And speaking of which, I have been working since 1984 on a character named Dr. Rigor Morto. And Dr. Rigor Morto is an homage to my love for the Munsters, the Addams Family, Hilarious House of Frightenstein,
I love it.
H.R. Puffin stuff, and so much more. And so I'm
Mhm.
taking all of those memories and creating a completely new world called the
Mhm.
Dr. Rigor Morto Show. And Dr. Rigor Morto is the classic 1950s villain, very garish and outrageous, but it's all makeup and craziness. There's puppets, there's animation. We're going to be trying to sell the show to hopefully Netflix or Warner TV or even Shudder. But
Right.
we are working on a pilot right now. And as a precursor, I have created my very first book, which is a Dr. Rigor Morto activity book. And this
Oh,
is an adult activity book
I
that
love
will
it.
remind you of your childhood in a horrifyingly sinister
I
way.
love it.
And so
I love
you
it.
can buy this at the Devil's Toy Shop.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I'm building on my toy line as we get closer to Christmas also. So there's going to be more things,
Mhm.
Krampus dolls, etc., that will be
Ooh.
for sale, all handmade by me, not mass produced, so
Mhm.
that you can actually enjoy a piece of art that is also something you can carry with you proudly as your
Mhm.
little mascot in your car or to even meetings if you'd like. And
Right.
so,
Because no two will be alike. Handmade
no,
means never.
impossible. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. I think that's exciting.
Thank
So
you.
this film, you're basically, or this production you're getting ready to put forward.
Yeah.
Are you hoping this is going to become a series? Is this going to become a
Yes.
short film?
No, it's not a film at all. It's actually a TV series. And so
Nice.
it will be a horror sitcom like in the 1950s.
I
And
love it.
we are still toying with the idea that it will maybe be in black and white, or it
Oh,
may be in Technicolor, which means, remember in the 1960s and early 50s, the colors in Technicolor film were
mhm.
very off, kind of
Yes,
pastel-y. They
yes,
didn't quite look right. We
yes.
might actually film the show in Technicolor, which it would be lovely.
It would.
And
It would. Yeah.
so this idea, and you can find out more about it if you go to thedevilstoyshop.com, of
Right.
course. And
Right.
you can also look up Dr. Rigor Morto on the
Mhm.
internet, because 7 years ago we created a pilot episode for the show originally. And my sidekick at the time that we had employed to play the character that worked with Dr. Rigor Morto
Mm.
was Michael Robards. And
Okay.
Michael Robards was the gentleman that played Uncle Fester on the new Addams Family.
Oh, wow, okay. That's
And
fantastic.
it was such a treat working with him.
Mhm.
He was an old friend of mine, and
Right.
he played my sidekick Humphrey, which was my Igor type character.
Right.
Sadly, Michael passed away 2 years ago of a heart attack,
Oh,
so we
oh,
lost him,
sorry to hear
and
that. Yeah.
it kind of changed my want or need to do the show for a while. And so
Mhm.
it wasn't until this past 6 months I decided to get back on the dilapidated old horse and try again. But I didn't
Right.
want to replace Michael as that character. And so what we've done is I've invented a new character sidekick for Dr. Rigor Morto that is a 7.5 foot tall troll monster.
No, geez,
and it's a puppet.
that's a big difference
Yes.
in character type.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't want somebody to try and
No,
replace or copy Michael. And so I
no,
thought, what better way to do this than to actually have a great big puppet, the
right,
troll monster. And
right.
so that's my new sidekick that we'll be introducing in February.
Right. Wow. I am really looking forward to that. That's going to be fantastic. I mean, we all grew up loving Adam's Family, Munsters. I used
Oh,
to call, Munsters my TV family. I still do when I'll post something about them. Butch Patrick has been on the show for a little bit, and grew up to Hilarious House of Frightenstein.
we have been lucky enough to talk with Butch Patrick, and I don't want to jinx
Oh,
this,
of
but
course.
Butch
Yeah.
has already said that he would be interested in doing a
Yeah.
character on the show.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so
He's wonderful.
as long as we get the show picked up, he said he'd be interested in working with us because he loves the idea of a new horror
Yeah.
sitcom.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I think it would be great. I mean, he's the face of the Munsters now for darn sure. And Mitch Markowitz, Hilarious House of Frightenstein,
Who I've
he's
also
been
met.
on the show. He's a personal friend. I love him.
Wonderful.
But who understands that more? The whole spoofiness of all of it. And these are the type of shows that they're just long gone.
I know.
They just don't make them anymore like this. And
They will. If I
good.
have it my way, we will bring back
Hmm.
the Dr. Rigor Mortis show as the new Munsters, as the new Adams Family, as the new Hilarious House of Frightenstein, so that
Right.
this next generation of kids can get excited about
Yeah.
garish monster characters all over again.
Right. And then you just have people like us as adults. Hey,
Oh,
this
of
is the
course.
result of
And I
that
know
era.
demographically that a lot of people 40 plus are going to be glomming onto the show because of the
Yeah.
childhood factor of their
Oh,
memory
yeah.
of
Oh,
being
yeah.
a kid, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. Just takes you back. I, for one, would definitely, promote it, watch it, enjoy it, all of the above. So, but wow, it's really been awesome to have you on. Anything else that you want to put out there for everybody to hear? Anything else you have coming up or how to
Well,
book with?
ultimately, as it is, we are in the middle of Hello Month, so the Diablo
Yes.
Manor has booked up pretty solid, but we do have a few nights that are half open. In other words, there's still room for two more couples for a night here or a night there. So
Oh,
if you go to diablomanor.com and you're interested, you can go there. It'll take you to the ticket site, which will show you where you can actually get your tickets and also how many tickets are left. You'll want to celebrate Halloween here. Bar none, there is nothing like it anywhere on the planet. And then understand that if you do like the creepiness of the Diablo Manor, we are moving into mid November into our Victorian Christmas.
oh, very nice.
And the
Very
whole
nice.
manor becomes a haunting Victorian Christmas. And
Wow.
it ends as an evening because I'm world famous for this. I end the evening by doing my stage version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Now, I am employed by the Dr. Seuss Foundation to actually tell this story at places like Casa Loma, and I have been backed up musically by the Bare Naked Ladies in the past while doing this story.
Very
And
nice.
so ultimately, I'm famous for doing this in front of thousands of people all over North America. I performed it at Christmas Wonderland in Florida for 6 months straight. And
Wow.
ultimately, I'm very proud of the production itself. And I will be doing it starting November 15th here at the Diablo Manor until December 20th. And this will be our Victorian Christmas time period. So if you are delighted with the idea of having a horrifying Christmas, come to the Diablo Manor. You'll not regret it. Trust me on that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. God, if it wasn't in the middle of a move, I'd do it. I'm hoping to
Oh,
be
I
totally
understand.
moved by then. So, but definitely, I'm definitely going to be checking out Diablo Manor because I'm enthralled. I'm completely enthralled with the whole persona of
Thank
your character, and of course, as a lover of just old, unique homes and locations, I think I'll be getting the best of both worlds. So I
you.
absolutely am
Yes.
looking forward to it. So we are pretty much now at the end of the segment, and I really want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your stories. Um, I'm always just so amazed, and I love your family's history. I think it is just
Thank you.
phenomenal. it has definitely brought the whole midway thing, growing up and loving everything about it. And you just, now I can look at things and go, I know where this comes from. I know where this comes from. And there's a lot more unique. You guys have to watch the very first archive to find out about a lot of other things that your grandfather was responsible for in your family, and just phenomenal tales that you had to tell. And, you know, the heartbreaking tale of your paranormal story. I also did an episode with Ghostly Encounters, and they're pretty emotional shows that go on there, the stories. And I'm definitely going to look yours up, because those go, that's a wayback machine. I know for me when I did it. So
it's on Prime right now.
Oh,
I've
is
actually,
it?
I went to Prime and I discovered that they do have Ghostly Encounters, the season that I'm on, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
called Possession. It's season 3.
Okay, guys, so go and look it up, because I'm sure you're gonna have all kinds of people like really interested. And of course, you know, we feel for you and for her as well. It's a terrible thing to go through, and I know I work with many families who go through this, and I see many families break up, and then I see some who stand together. So it's always a very personal experience. So thank you very much for sharing it with us, and I hope you have a spooktacular season, shall we say.
Thank you. And from me to all of you, happy haunting.
Thank you. And good night, Scott.
Good night.
Well, everyone, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment of The Outer Realm. Big thank you to our special guest, Scott McClelland. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee. Huge thank you to Dr. Snick, Justin Snicker. If you want to contact us, please do so at theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. I get simply too many messages via social media. It's just too hard to keep up with. So I know Amelia is much the same. So please, theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. Wherever you watch the show, please subscribe, join, like, follow, whatever the case may be. We appreciate you all so much for supporting us. So thank you. Next week, new to The Outer Realm will be John Kachuba, and I really hope I did not pulverize his name. I apologize if I did. He's going to be discussing his book, Shapeshifters, A History. And it looks super interesting, and he's super knowledgeable, so you're not going to want to miss that. Thursday night, we welcome back Mark Ollie, all the way from the UK. He's going to be discussing witches and vampires and so much more. He is a wealth of information, and we have him booked several times over the course of 2023, and he's going to be sharing those stories with us. So thank you very much. Everybody have a fantastic weekend, and good night.